If you think you have a yeast infection and want to know how to effectively treat it, keep watching this video. I'm going to talk about the symptoms of a yeast infection and how to get rid of it. Welcome to my channel. My name is Diana and I'm a physician assistant specializing in women's health and gynecology. You are watching In the Pink. And in case you were wondering, In the Pink actually means in good health and wellness, which is what my channel is all about, specifically for women and girls. So if you want a resource for information about birth control, menopause, and hot flashes, breast problems, UTIs, cancer symptoms, and so much more, give this video a thumbs up and hit subscribe so you don't miss any videos just like this one. All right, now the intros are out of the way, let's get down to business and talk about yeast infections. So yeast infections. This is one of the most common causes of vaginal itching and discharge. If you've had a yeast infection, you know what I'm talking about. It's itchy, and it's burny, and it's got discharge. And if you have it, all you can think of is how to get rid of it, and fast. Now be sure to watch this video to the very end, because at the end I'm going to talk about the circumstances where you shouldn't try to treat a yeast infection on your own, or rather you should go in and see your medical provider to be treated. So watch for that at the end. So yeast infections are very common and very annoying problem for many women. It's often officially diagnosed at your medical provider's office. There you can be prescribed oral or vaginal medication that can quickly treat your infection. However, many women choose to diagnose and treat their symptoms on their own. And I think this is okay to do, especially if you've been diagnosed with yeast infections before and you know what they feel like and what they look like. If you decide to treat a yeast infection on your own, there are some important things to know. First of all, yeast infections are commonly caused by an organism called Candida, and it is the second most common cause of vaginitis, second only to bacterial vaginosis. Second, up to 25% of women have Candida yeast in their vagina already as part of their normal flora, which means normal vaginal microorganisms that always live in your vagina. Yeast infections only need to be treated if there are symptoms. Symptoms of yeast infections include burning and itching within the vagina or the vulva, which is also called the vaginal lips, pain with sex, pain when you urinate or pee, or vaginal discharge. Vaginal discharge in itself doesn't always mean there's a problem. Most women have vaginal discharge every day. And if you're wondering if your vaginal discharge is just normal or if it could be an infection, watch my video that talks about what normal vaginal discharge looks and smells like. And I'll put a link to that video in my video description. Third, there's actually something that you can do at home that takes much of the guesswork out of self-diagnosing and treating a yeast infection. So how do we do this? What you can do is check your vaginal pH. Checking the vaginal pH is exactly what I do in my office when I'm looking to diagnose somebody with vaginal symptoms. Now, in order to understand this, let's talk about vaginal pH. So pH test checks for acidity and alkalinity. So a healthy vagina typically has a lower pH if there's no infection or if there's a yeast infection. But other common infections, like bacterial vaginosis, for example, increases your vaginal pH. So if you are having symptoms of an infection and your vaginal pH is low, then it's more likely that your symptoms could be from a yeast infection. But if you're having vaginal symptoms and your pH is high, it could be from a different type of infection. And if that happens, then you should get your symptoms checked out by your medical provider. Now here's the tricky part. There's nothing in the rule book that says you can't have two infections at one time, right? In fact, up to half of women who have a yeast infection have a second type of infection as well. So even if the pH test is high and you really think that you have a yeast infection because you've had it before and you know what it feels like, you can still buy the over-the-counter cream that treats yeast infections, but you should still get checked out by your medical provider just to make sure something else isn't going on, like a secondary infection. Now I know that there are tons of home remedies out there that you can try to treat your yeast infections yourself, and I'm not bashing them at all. Just know that lots of these treatments haven't been effectively studied, so be careful and use your common sense if you're going to try any of those. But If you want to treat your yeast infection with something that has been well studied and shown to be effective in treating yeast infections, I would stick with what you can purchase when you go to the pharmacy in the over-the-counter section. They have recently come up with an over-the-counter yeast infection cream that also includes the pH test. I think that's a great option because you can check out what your vaginal pH is before you try the cream. This is good, especially if you just aren't sure if you have a yeast infection or if you have something else. So I will put a link to that in the video description down below. Now, there are some circumstances when you should see your medical provider rather than treating a yeast infection yourself. If you have tried an over-the-counter cream and it didn't help, if you've had more than 3 infections in a year, if your symptoms are severe, not just mild to moderate, but really bad, or if you have a medical condition that makes it harder for your body to fight infections like HIV or diabetes, or if you're pregnant. Thanks for watching my video on how to effectively treat a yeast infection. I hope that you found it informative. Next week's video is going to be on the easy and natural ways you can prevent yeast infections. So hit subscribe so you don't miss that video. Also hit the like button and the notification bell so that you won't miss any future videos. So the question that I have for you is, do you have ways that you treat or prevent your yeast infections that you have found effective? Put that in the comment section below. I'd love to read all about it. Just as a reminder, this video is intended to be educational and informative, but it is not intended to diagnose or treat you. So if you have any medical symptoms that you're concerned about, be sure to have that checked out by your own provider. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.